Hey everybody, today I'm talking about the Reavers of Midgard. Now this is a 29 release by Grey Fox Games and it's touted as the spiritual successor to Champions of Midgard, which is a game with the same kind of genre, the Viking theme, by the same company. Now Champions of Midgard was a bit of a lukewarm kind of hit for me. I didn't like a lot of the aspects of it because it was kind of a hybrid between Eurogame mechanisms and kind of Amerithrash mechanisms, with a lot of dice rolling and roll to resolve and stuff like that, which left me feeling a bit miffed really. I didn't always feel like it kind of worked quite as well as I'd like it to. However, Reavers of Midgard was kind of touted as being the more Euro equivalent to it, so more strategy, kind of more maybe autonomy of your decisions and kind of more more control. So naturally that kind of piqued my interest a lot more and I had a lot higher hopes for this one. So I got this game to the table and here are my thoughts on the game. So much like Champions of Midgard, this one is a worker placement game. However, this one is kind of a single worker placement game. So everybody's only going to have one worker. That can change depending on who's first player and stuff, but generally one worker. And you're going to put them on one of, I think it's like 7 or 8 spots. And maybe less than that, 6 spots even. And when you place that worker on your spot, you get to take the action first, but you'll also get an additional bonus. Everybody else then follows in turn, taking that action, but getting a bonus that's less powerful than the one prior to it. So that's kind of how the game works. So whenever someone takes an action, you still get to do something, and you're not kind of locked out of spaces as you are in a lot of worker placement games. Now that sounded quite cool, I quite like that idea. And there's quite a lot going on in this game as well. So I'll kind of talk through how the game kind of works and then kind of give my thoughts on maybe in more of an opinionated manner. So first off, I quite like the idea of the single worker thing. It's cool, it kind of reminds me of things like Puerto Rico or Rising Sun or TI4, stuff like that. I like kind of ways that people can take their turn and you still be involved. So that's a really nice idea. Don't get me wrong, you still have to pay the resources and stuff that the person who goes there would have to pay to activate that spot. But still, it's a nice way to keep all players on their toes and keep everyone involved at all times. So I like that. So one of the first spots you get is what's called a Reaver. And this is a part of the game that I really do enjoy. Because what you do is you take one of these cards or take a stack of these cards called Reavers. They have multiple uses. So they first of all, they give you dice, which are going to be used for loads of things in the game. They're going to give you the option to kind of discard them to get additional benefits, such as dice of your choice and stuff like that. You can choose to put them as your leader, which is a really cool concept because on all player boards, you've got this slot where you can kind of plug a leader into and you get an instant bonus. And then from then on, all dice matching the color of that Reaver or a certain symbol acts as a wild. So you get a lot more kind of freedom depending on which leader you have. So you've got the red leaders, the blue leaders and the yellow leaders. And I really like that idea. Second off, or third option, is that you can plug it into the bottom of your board, meaning that when certain players go to certain different actions on the board, you get a bonus. So there's that nice little touch of engine building there that, again, really piqued my interest and kept my interest when the game was being explained to me. I thought, this is something nice I can really sink my teeth into. Because you've got that engine building, you've got that kind of, that mitigation of having a certain type of dice and using those wilds and stuff like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed that part of the game. Then there's other spots where you can kind of go to, which I kind of would explain it as more of a kind of a lucky dip. So you go into this spot, you're trading in certain types of resources in order to flip these tiles over and get what's on the back. And there can be loads of things, and you're kind of picking them blindly. You don't really know what's on the other side. I mean, there is a kind of chart that shows what's on what tile, but other than that, you don't have a clue what's on it. And also, for each time you do that, you get a kind of a cumulative bonus at the end of each round for each time you've done it. So that is a nice way of getting points, again, getting these tiles and getting points that way. Another one is to go basically fight at sea, which again kind of reminisce back to Champions of Midgard, where you're going out to the sea, you're kind of overcoming an obstacle and then fighting a monster at sea. And you can either choose to do that by allocating a specific number of dice, or you can dedicate these kind of hammers, which lets you roll dice and maybe way a bit more on the luck side of things. So you've got that option of playing like Champions of Midgard and kind of, being a bit more lucky and rolling some dice, or you can know for sure that you're going to win the fight and just dedicate a designated number of dice. And you get points in return, you get rewards in return and stuff like that. So that's, again, it's fine. I think it's a slight improvement on the Champions of Midgard because, as I said, you can actually know for sure that you're going to win the fight, but you've still got that hurdle to overcome by that unknown monster that you're going to face, which is something I'm a bit sore and I don't like it. I didn't like it from Champions of Midgard, and because it can just completely throw a huge spanner in the works. But this one, again, it's slightly better than it is in Champions of Midgard. Another option is you can go to this different location where you are getting bonuses based on cards that are adjacent to each other. You're picking up cards and kind of getting more horns and stuff, which let you mitigate your dice rolls. You can kind of get rid of these negative, I guess they're called like, I don't know, they're curses or something, where the more you have them, the more negative points you accumulate at the end of the game. So it's a bit like Lords of Waterdeep or something like that in terms of the corruption. So it's kind of a set collection, but negative points. And then you've got the other spot as well, where you are kind of getting upgrades for your board, such as having these tokens which represent kind of a certain type of dice. So it's kind of more actions you can kind of know for sure you've got. Or you can also got these artifacts you can plug in as well, which kind of increases your capacity for dice and stuff like that. And there's also another spot for just kind of collecting resources or getting end game scoring. So that's basically how the different spots in the game. And as I said, if people go there, you still get to do what they've chosen to do, but at a lower rate. Now, it's kind of a very, very confusing game because I think when it's being explained to you, it does come across as a very heavy game. Because there's quite a lot going on. There's a lot of rules, loads of different ways to score and stuff like that. But when you actually start playing the game, you start to realise that these spots are very, very simple. And a lot of them I'm a bit miffed on how simple the actual strategy behind it is compared to the kind of user interface of the game. Because when you go into certain spots, a lot of the time you are just making choices that are very obvious to you, or you are skimming cards off the top of the deck as your bonus action or your incentive of going there first. So for example, if you go to a certain spot, you would get first dibs of picking the cards that pair together and adding them to your kind of tableau or your endgame scoring. And then you get to skim like 2 cards off the top of the deck, which could be fantastic. They could be completely useless. And on some of those spots in particular, the set collection aspect of it is very dominant. I think when I played this, one of the players I played with got more than half of their points just from set collection. And that's just through things that you've accumulated along the way, sometimes just through pure luck. So for example, you've got like armor, which, the more you get, the more points you accumulate. You've got your tapestries, you've got your treasures, you've got your, I think it's art. So there's loads of different ways you can collect kind of points just by accumulating different cards. And for a game of this kind of depth to, or kind of heaviness to explain, that kind of way of scoring points is so gateway. It's like one of the most primitive ways of getting points you can in a game. And normally for a game of this, Euro feel and the density of it, you would expect that to be a very small part of the game and just to get a few additional points. Whereas this, it was very, very dominant, which did surprise me a bit as well. Also, that aspect I explained when you go to that spot and you get to trade in your goods to get these tiles. Forgive me, I don't know all the different names of the different spaces. I can't remember them. But that seemed to be a part that you really could not ignore in this game, because if you go there first, you get to do that 3 times and collect 3 tiles. And then at the end of each round, you're going to get points depending on the amount of tiles you've got. So if you really let someone run away with getting those tiles each time, then they're going to accumulate a lot of points and keep jumping ahead and ahead and ahead and ahead. So you cannot let anyone run away with that. So for that reason, you've always got to have a kind of a certain amount of resources in your pool to make sure that you can always kind of do what other players do when they go to certain spaces. And because of that as well, that really took away a lot of the tension of getting to certain spaces first, because you're always going to want to do what other people do. And so it didn't really matter about who went where first, or who, the tension of getting to somewhere before someone else did. really was weak at best. You know, and that's because I said the bonuses are sometimes just skimming cards off the deck, top of the deck. And I say some of the time, it's a lot of the time. There is so much top decking in this game to, you know, to determine your kind of fate. And even, you know, it's a difference maker between the winner and the loser is basically what cards you draw off the top of the deck on a pure luck kind of basis, which again, it just didn't sit right for a game of this, you know, of this scope. I mean, the way it's being explained and the rules and the mechanisms, I was like, oh, this is really interesting. But the depth of the game and the strategy of the game is really wafer thin. It's like almost like having like a Ferrari kind of car with the engine of a go-kart. It just didn't have the guts of a Euro game, but it had the like user interface of a really interesting Euro game. Again, very, very strange. And I would completely hesitate to even call this like a heavy game, or I think it's been touted to that. I think maybe people have maybe more said it's more of a medium weight game, which I would say it more is in terms of the way it plays, but the strategy is pretty much a lightweight game, which is again extremely strange. Why wouldn't you just play a lightweight game in order to get this kind of you know, decisions, rather than playing a game with so much kind of going on just to play a lightweight game underneath, if that makes sense. It's very, very confusing, and I kind of struggle to see how this is going to keep the attention of someone who wants a heavy Euro game as compared to someone who wants to play a lightweight game. They're not going to be willing to play something of this kind of rules overhead. So yeah, a very, very strange kind of feel of the game, because it's just, there's just the depth and the complexity just are so jarring in the way they kind of fit together, in my opinion. So I think all in all, this one is a bit of a miss for me. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate it. I was just very surprised about the way it played. I was expecting the decisions to be a lot more tough. There really wasn't any tough decisions at all. I was just kind of breezing my way through it. At the end of the game, there was a very few points in between the winner and the loser. And I feel like we all just kind of just went by our own business at different, you know, at our own pace. Didn't really struggle over certain spaces. I didn't think I played particularly well. I just kind of hoped to get the cards that I wanted by drawing off the top of the deck and stuff like that. I think you know, the difference maker is sometimes pure luck. I still don't like the fact that when you go to fight back monsters at sea, you have to you know, you have to overcome something that you can't see, so it could completely just shaft you with no fault of your own. The set collection was a bit too dominating for me, way too much endgame scoring points. Some of the additional kind of set collection or endgame scoring was just completely tacked on. And yeah, I think all in all, it just was not a great game for me. Decisions just not enough. It was so promising in some aspects. Again, I love the player boards. They're really cool. You know, you've got a certain allocation of dice on there. You can choose your leader, which make the dice wild. You've got the artifacts, which increase your capacity and give you other powers. You've got the engine building by using your Reavers on the bottom to get cumulative bonuses when people go to certain spots. And also you've got the additional items you can use as kind of reserves, such as getting additional hammers or additional shields and stuff like that. But yeah, I love that part of it. I think that's absolutely brilliant, and that should be used for another game with more thoughts and decisions that go behind it. So yeah, this is like almost like half of a really promising game, and then half of a game that's so limp that it just completely baffles me. So yeah, I can't really recommend it in terms of its strategy and depths and decisions and stuff like that. Balance of the game, I think it's too reliant on top decking, as I said. So yeah, I don't really like that part as well, where you go to get the tiles. Too much luck in that. Mechanism wise, I said the user interface is really good, but the game depth nowhere near as good. Time frame is actually relatively good. I think it takes about an hour and a half on the spot to play, which is quite a nice time frame for something like this. Because again, there is enough going on to keep you interested, but if it went any longer, then I think it would kind of outstay its welcome. Uptime as well was absolutely fine, because as I said, you're piggybacking on other people's actions all the time. Replayability, I think it's relatively low in this one. I think when we played the game, we went through pretty much all the cards in the decks, which kind of means you've explored everything. So yeah, not loads of strategies to try and stuff like that, because every time you're going to be going to everything and almost exhausting every pile. So yeah, not loads of different things to explore and stuff like that. So again, relatively limp in terms of how much you can play this game. Player interaction, nowhere near as good as I'd like it to be. As I said, there's no competition over these worker placement spots, in my opinion. The use of that kind of corruption, I forget what it's called in this one. You can kind of a bit of take that by some cards that you give those tokens to other players to give them more negative points. Don't really like that, to be honest. I try to avoid that at all costs. Visually, absolutely beautiful game. The artwork is fantastic. The components are great. I mean, the dice are fantastic, custom, bright, nice, clear symbology. All the cards and symbology are really nice. Yeah, no problem at all. The player boards in particular, I really enjoyed. So yeah, artwork, production-wise, top tier. The game trays that come in the box are fantastic, really good for storage. And again, the board itself is really quite nice looking. So, and the theme as well, it's decent. I mean, you know, you go into sea fighting the monsters and going to pillage towns and stuff like that. So I quite like the theme, but for a more kind of Euro feeling game, I mean, you know, I think it's as good as it can be. And setup and teardown time as well is absolutely proportionate. So yeah, overall, such a weird kind of fitting game for me. I can't quite put my finger on why it was designed like this. I can see what they're trying to do. It's like they want to really kind of play up that Euro feel to it. But you need, not only do you need the mechanisms that are Euro, you need the decisions and you need those kind of brain kind of straining, decisions to make, and you need to, do your kind of minimum or you can optimize your moves as much as possible. Where in this, there really wasn't much of that. Wherever you go is absolutely fine. Decisions are very obvious. And again, too much dependence on top decking and just lucky dips and stuff like that. So yeah, I can't recommend Reavers of Midgard. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate it. I would play it again. I think my expectations were a bit too high because, as I said, it was so touted as a more Euro game, and I love my Euros. This one isn't really a Euro feeling game. It's too light in terms of its strategy. So yeah, it gets a mediocre verdict from me, which is about a 5 out of 10. Again, not a negative review. I didn't hate it, but again, I can't recommend it, and I wouldn't ever kind of ask to play it again. If someone really offered to play it, I would, and I'd kind of enjoy it to my best I can. But again, not quite for me, this one. If you have enjoyed this review, please hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos too. For everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board.